I know that it takes a lot to get to these conferences, but what you do every day is so, so important. Today, our panel is about taking back our fair economy. We know that the tables are turned against us, and every time a worker without a collective bargaining agreement gets a worse deal, like we've been hearing about, it drags all of us down. And we are on a race to the bottom. So it's our duty to lift up all workers. That's what unions are about. And as all workers are lifted up, as the saying goes, a rising tide lifts all boats. So the fight to reclaim our economy for all of us takes place in many places, and it looks different all over. We know that the basic struggle for rights that are guaranteed in most of the world, we have to fight for to make sure that we keep those rights for us and for all workers. Things like FMLA, paid FMLA, those are state fights. That's what part of this panel is about. Paid sick days, safe time for all workers, flexible scheduling practices, and livable wages are to name a few. These are all fights that we need to be engaged in, and we can win them if we join together with coalitions and we never stop thinking about the regular working people like us and about our coalition partners. We at CWA understand that we must fight to lift up all workers, as I said before, through friendly legislation and ordinances all around the country. Once we do that, it actually makes our fight at the bargaining table easier. I have a few stories to share, and I'll interject them as we talk to our panelists. Our panel today will focus on some important work that CWA has been engaged in at the city and state level. We have a great panel, so let me introduce them now. First, I have Rachel Lyons. Come on up. Hi, thank you for coming. Oops. Thank you. Come on over here. Rachel is the Senior Government Affairs Manager for Workplace Programs at the National Partnership for Women and Families. Rachel joined the National Partnership in 2011 and is responsible for coordinating federal education and advocacy on workplace policies, including paid sick days, Family Medical and Leave Act paid, expansion of the Family and Medical Leave Act, and fair pay and pregnancy non-discrimination. Next, we have Wendy Weiner. You want to bring Kabeti up? And we also have with her Kabeti Teagan. Kabeti, could you come up too?
Thank you.
Sure. Wendy is the organizing director at SEIU for Property Services Division, where she oversees the Fight for 15. We've all heard a lot about that. Wendy has been an organizer for more than 20 years for healthcare workers, janitors, and now airport workers.
Woo.
Joining Wendy is Kabeti Teagan, who is a baggage carrier at National Airport. He is a leader in the Fight for 15 and for union rights. He works for a subcontractor serving Delta Airlines. And last but not least is our Mona Meyer. She's a CWA Minnesota State Council President from District 7, and Mona is also the LPAC coordinator for the state. She's worked at AT&T for 28 years. Her successful coordination of the LPAT structure within CWA locals and relationships with coalition partners have garnered successes such as the defeat of voter ID and the Anti-Marriage Act of 2012. We have a great panel for you, and we will go ahead and get started. Rachel, tell
Yes.
us about your work at the National Partnership for Women and Families and some of the issues that are your main focus.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, CWA. It's a real honor to be here at your conference. I don't know if folks know much about the National Partnership. The National Partnership for Women and Families is a 45-year-old women's advocacy organization. In fact, we just celebrated our 35th anniversary this week. And we are most well known as the organization that helped write and led the coalition to pass the Family and Medical Leave Act. So the FMLA, as most folks know it, is the only national law right now that we have in place that helps families balance work and family. We're very proud of its passage. It's helped over 200 million Americans take job-protected leave to care for themselves or a family member or to welcome a new child. But we know that it was always meant to be a first step. It was always meant to be the first step in building a more family-friendly economy for all workers. But unfortunately, 23 years later, we have not taken that next step. And many workers are left out of the protections that the FMLA provides. It is unpaid. It only applies if you're in an employer with 50 or more employees, if you've been on the job for a year. And these limitations have left the fact that 40% of the private sector workforce is ineligible for the FMLA protections that it provides. So we looked at that, looked at the studies, looked at the research we had heard from, talked to workers, and undertook from the beginning, but more recently in the last 5 years, a campaign to pass paid family and medical leave. And that, along with our work on paid sick days, anti-pregnancy discrimination, and fair pay, constitute a package of issues that are meant to address the struggles that we're hearing that families are experiencing. And that's because of some basic economic facts, which I'm sure you all know. Women are now 50% of the workforce. Most children grow up in families where both parents work. We know, and we have what's called we're calling a caregiving tsunami. More seniors, not enough caregivers, and this has resulted in people struggling, not being able to be there with their parents when they're going through cancer treatment, not being there, being able to take any time off when they welcome a new child. The statistic is 50% of women take no time off, take no maternity leave to welcome a new baby. And it also means that you're not there to take care of your own illness or do the preventative care that you need. So we work in coalition. We cannot do this alone, and we manage a national work and family coalition that is working to pass these issues and work on these issues at the federal and state level. And we'll talk a little more. I'll leave time to talk more because the action is at the states. That is where we are seeing action. You will go and talk to Congress, and I want you to convince them to support these issues at the federal level because that's what we need for universality. That's what we need to make sure that every worker has access to the time to take care of themselves. But until then, let's get it at the state level. And we have seen paid sick days, which is that short-term leave. That's the time, that's that unplanned leave. When you get the call from school and they're like, Susie has fallen off the jungle gym, or you call in with the flu, or that time paid sick days has passed in 35 jurisdictions around the country, 5 states, but all cities here and there. And that's where I think that you and CWA and your members can get involved. There are campaigns around the country. Paid family and medical leave is a little harder to do state by state. 4 states have passed it, and we're so excited that New York State was the 4th this year, and I know many folks were involved in that fight, and it was phenomenal. That was a coalition effort to beat all coalition efforts. It took everybody to make that fight because that had been talked about for quite some time. But there is some limitations to how far you can go to pass paid family leave at the state level because of the infrastructure costs. So that one I think will have to be a national fight, but both of them need to be nationalized at some point because these are basic benefits. And once we get these benefits, I mean, I know a lot of you have them through your contracts, but your partners don't, or your kids don't, and your kids can't take off the time to come see you and take care of you. that is a pressure on your family. And so that's what we're really looking for is to create fairness across the economy for everybody, to recognize that the world of work has changed and our policy have just not caught up to the fact that we are all caregivers and we all want to be good workers and good family members. And so that's what the National Partnership is working on. And we can tell you that there is interest and momentum, that there are presidential candidates talking about these issues, that everybody, down ballot candidates, that the media is interested in it. Across town today is the United State of America Women's Summit going on. 5,000 women getting together to talk about these kinds of issues. So I think it's something that's exciting and will fundamentally change the way we work, and is what I keep calling the next big thing.
That's great. Just to follow up, Rachel, you mentioned some of these things, but what's your most recent win? And what do you think contributed to that, to your success, to the success of that?
The most, in chronological order, the most recent win was San Diego, actually. San Diego passed paid sick days on June 7th in a ballot initiative. And it was a significant win because 2 years before, they had passed it through the city council, and the mayor overturned it and said, no, that's not what you mean to do. Let's put this to the voters. And the voters came back and said, no, that's what we want. And they passed paid sick days, and their paid sick days is better than the statewide law that had passed just the year before. So that was significant. That's the most recent. I think New York is significant for the greatest impact. That just passed this year, so it won't go into effect until 2017. And it graduates up, but it is a very progressive policy. It applies to all the ranges of family types and caregiving types. It has a progressive wage replacement structure. So we're seeing gain after gain, and from cities and in towns to whole states.
That's great. We all know in our contracts, over the last probably 10 years, there's been an attack on paid sick time. And we've seen less and less paid sick time for our members. Recently, we're in negotiations right now with OFS, which is a manufacturing plant, one in Georgia and one in Massachusetts. Well, when it comes to sick time and paid sick days, Massachusetts has a state law. So they end up getting 80 hours, 2 weeks of sick time, versus Georgia sitting right across the table with us on our side that has to just get what the company wants to bargain. So these are things that it raises the floor, and it helps us at the bargaining table as we help all workers. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Wendy, can you give us an overview of the Fight for 15 campaign and your specific work with airport workers?
Yes.
And why this is so important?
Yes, I can do that. Good morning, everybody. I think everybody, okay, just check in. I know it's been a long morning of a lot of information. Just want to get everybody with us here. People are probably a little hungry. So before I get to the question, I just wanted to thank you for inviting us here today. And also, I assume that there are some Verizon workers in the room here. And I just wanted to congratulate all of you on your recent victory and to thank you for standing up, to thank you for fighting, and thank you for inspiring me personally and our members to fight a little bit more. Because when we fight, we win. And you guys showed that, and I'm really... It's really exciting. So I want to start out by just saying one thing, that in the United States of America, 64 million workers make below $15 an hour. Let that sink in for a second. 64 million workers make below $15 an hour. And if you think about those workers and their families and their parents who they need to take care of and their children who they need to take care of and their neighborhoods and their communities, the impact of that is astounding, right, on everything that we do. And And for those of us who make more than $15 an hour, what that means is that the floor is set by the minimum wage. And everything that we have to fight like hell, excuse my language, to keep, with our nails, because everything is constantly being pulled down. And so in 2012, when 200 extremely brave fast food workers in New York City walked off their jobs and demanded $15 an hour in union rights, people thought they were a little bit loco. Because who was talking about $15 an hour at that time? It was like, oh, maybe we'll negotiate over 10, And, but they did it, and they stood up and they fought. And just less than 4 years later, both New York and California have passed $15 an hour minimum wage. That is astounding.
That's astounding.
And though I would love to take responsibility for all that work, I just get to be a part of it. So what does it mean for airports? Because I know a lot of workers in this room also work at airports or work for airlines. So I'm sure that many of you know that airport jobs used to be good jobs, right? And in the past 30 years, with the incredible outsourcing of jobs on the ground at the airport, the standards for airport workers have dropped dramatically. So much so that some workers' wages have been cut by 40% as a result of outsourcing. I know a worker in Seattle who works at SeaTac. He was a machinist. Alaska Airlines and the Cover of Night outsourced their jobs in 2006. He was making $22 an hour plus benefits. He now works doing the same work for a subcontractor. He was making $10 an hour, but because of the fight for 15, finally he's making $15 an hour again. But my God, right? Like, yeah. How is that possible? How do people survive? And so I want to, so this is what's happened in airport jobs. And at SCIU, we're working with unions like the CWA and other partners who are fighting back against what's happened in our economy to figure out how to make airport jobs good jobs again and how to stop this race to the bottom for outsourced jobs. And so I want to ask my colleague Kebede to talk a little bit about what's going on at DCA, what his story is, and what they're doing to fight back.
Well, let me introduce myself first to you. My name is Kebede Alamutagany. I am 46 and the father of one. I came from Ethiopia, and when we started our campaign in the airport, we are few in numbers. But through our time, through our campaign, thanks for 32BJ local, we are today almost 90% of the workers are join us to fight their rights, to get their union rights and a minimum wage of $15. Before I came here to the United States of America, the United States of America is my dream country, professionally dream country. I was intended to join the New York Stock Market Exchange before I came here. But after I came here just to get a simple job in the airport, it took 5 months for me. And I get $8 per an hour. I can't survive with that money. Even sometimes I didn't get any bread for that money. So because of this and other unmentioned reasons, I joined this campaign, and I will struggling till now.
Thank you. The workers at DCA, including Kebede, have gone on strike, right? You guys have fasted. We have had rallies, and we are not stopping. And they are going to join with workers in Fort Lauderdale and Philadelphia and Los Angeles and San Francisco and New York and Philadelphia and Boston, where we've actually had victories and where we've started to build the union and raise standards. And this last year, SCIU organized 7,000 outsourced airport workers into the union, and it started that process. And we've also, and I want to touch on something you said, which is part of our fight is we would love the federal government that gives so much money to airports and airlines through subsidies and capital improvements to take control of this process. That is not going to happen. In my lifetime, maybe, so what we've done, because airports are local political animals, we have worked with our local elected officials, our local politicians to change what's happening. And as a result, between Seattle and Philly and Fort Lauderdale and other places, we've been able to raise standards for probably 70,000 workers while not organizing all of them into the union, but fighting for something broader while we build our organization. Because where there's power, we have to engage with that power, and we have to hold folks accountable to raising standards for workers wherever we might be.
Right, thank you. Some of you may have experienced this in your local. When I was local president before this last election, I would send out blast emails and ask people to join in for the Fight for 15 and go to rallies and go to the fast food places or wherever that fight was going on, because that's what we do. And I would receive sometimes emails from my members, which you may have too, or you may in the future, saying, what are you doing? Why are you asking for $15 an hour for somebody, at McDonald's or whatever? I make $30 an hour and I have to be out in the weather and I have to climb telephone poles. And I said, exactly. Just think, if we could raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, how much would you be making? So sometimes you have to try to change that conversation with your members to say, you need to get it. It's not about bringing people down. It's about bringing people up. And you can't only look for your own self-fulfilling things that are going to help you, right? This helps you in a different way. So if you run into that with your members, take some time to talk about it and tell them why, in the long run, this helps them, but it helps all of us. And I appreciate everything you guys are doing right now for the Fight for 15. And it's working. I mean, McDonald's responded. I mean, a lot of places responded. They're not up there all the way, but people started getting raises, didn't they? So that just shows you the power of the workers. So we appreciate all of that. And Miss Mona, tell us about your work with Minnesotans for a Fair Economy. I know that you work tirelessly with that. What it is, who's involved in the coalition, and what are the issues of your main focus?
First of all, thank you so much, Lisa, for having us here. I'm very proud to talk about CWA in Minnesota and the involvement that we had with the Minnesota for a Fair Economy. This coalition was built with a number of organizations standing together to make sure that nobody was left behind in Minnesota's economy. For too long, too many working families have been struggling with health care, stagnant incomes, foreclosures, and unemployment. We're working to build a Minnesota where there's an opportunity for everyone to work hard and get ahead. In this coalition is, of course, our coalition partner, Take Action Minnesota, Say Tool, Neighborhoods Organizing for Change, Isaiah, which is a faith-based group, Working America, Minnesota Nurses, and also, of course, SEIU in Minnesota, and others who are part of this big coalition. CWA was an active partner in this coalition, as you said, Lisa, and in planning this strategy. We were engaging members around these issues daily and weekly. Coming out of this broader coalition was Minneapolis Works that was launched. It was an effort to raise standards for all working families in Minnesota by passing policies like Fair Work Week, earned sick time, wage theft protections, and of course, a $15 an hour minimum wage. In October, we ratcheted up the campaign a little bit and aggressively started engaging in a broader agenda. In fact, we did so that so successfully that we made history on May 27th and passed the state's first ordinance requiring employers to provide earned sick and safe time in the state of Minnesota. It was a huge victory for us, and this action, this final passing of this ordinance was because of a massive campaign led by workers of color. This ordinance will take effect in July of 2017 and help workers of more than 100,000 people gain access to paid sick days under the new law.
Wow.
Workers at businesses with 6 or more employees will be able to earn 1 hour of paid sick time for every 30 hours worked, up to a maximum of 48 accrued hours per year. This will also help the ordinance as well as the opportunities for people in making sure that we're raising the floor for everybody in the state of Minnesota. In addition, we put workers in front of it and got their stories out as well. But I'll let you ask that question in a little bit.
You jumped ahead on us.
I jumped ahead.
That's okay. It's a great segue. So we do understand that part of your strategy on this campaign was putting workers' faces to the issues and the struggles. Can you talk a little bit about that and how the coalition achieved that and what the effects of that were, please?
Yes, absolutely. The vote came after a year-long campaign involving hundreds of workers and numerous community and labor organizations. There was a massive campaign that were led just by workers. So throughout 2015 and into early 2016, hundreds of low-wage workers held forums, marches, rallies, went on strike, and shared their stories on social media with their council members and with the press. This provided a platform for various groups of workers and organizations to speak out on their specific issues that they faced and that they were addressing while we were all united behind one common goal. When you have people telling their own personal stories in front of decision makers, that's a reality that's very hard to ignore. Mm-hmm. And it's something that when a janitor, a healthcare worker, or a small business owner who completely supports this type of policy, those are big shining examples of how successful this was and how we were all coming together as a coalition. This was a huge undertaking and something that we just kept encouraging each other to keep striving for.
Right. Yes. You know, it's too easy for the policymakers and corporations as well. They don't put a face to anything. And when you don't have a face to anything, it's easy to close down your heart, you know, and look at it like sheer numbers, or we can't afford that, or everything's about the bottom line. So bringing in those faces and those personal stories are key to some of the successes. You know, and it always baffled me about the paid sick time, because you have people working sick, they get other people sick, and they, you know, if they're serving food, then they get the people that they're serving sick. I mean, it really makes more sense to not have them at work and not have them suffer. But, you know, we don't often think ahead of the bottom line when it's from a corporate view and that corporate greed. Thank you, Mona. And thank you for all the work that all of you guys are doing. Rachel, what's next coming up for you guys?
So I think next is there are some state campaigns around the country on both paid sick days and paid family leave. Here in DC, this summer, the DC City Council will be voting on paid family and medical leave. This fall, there are ballot initiatives in Arizona, Albuquerque, and Washington State on paid sick days. And so those are places where people can do that storytelling. And I want to reinforce the importance of storytelling as part of this. For too long, families have struggled with this work and family balance on their own. We need to take it out of the private and into the public sector. This is a problem that is affecting the economy. This is a problem, not just you personally. And so honestly, some of our elected officials have help and have the money to deal with this on their own, and so they are just not close to it and have not thought about it. So storytelling is incredibly important. And so we have these state campaigns around the country. We're also building support here at the federal level because things do change slowly, but we hope they will change in big ways in the coming years. And we need to ensure that a work and family agenda, an agenda that includes fair pay, ends to pregnancy discrimination, paid sick days, paid leave, an increase in the minimum wage, fair schedules. This whole agenda should be part and parcel of what every member of Congress is thinking about and how to solve. And we know that a lot of them are doing that because they're looking for something to do, right, that has a real tangible impact. They like to be able to tell their constituents that I did something for you. And paid sick days is a great one. It's very tangible. So those are some of the big fights that are coming up. But that's also, there are a lot of places that are ripe to start a fight and start a legislative battle. And I think that we are looking, one of the things the National Partnership offers is policy advice. So we worked with Minnesota to review the legislation because we know we have this global view of all the different laws that have passed, what works and doesn't work. And so we can help you work with your local city council. New Jersey passed now 12 city ordinances on paid sick days. If you can't do it statewide, you can do it city by city by city.
Yep.
And it's an incredible effort. So I think we can do that, and we should look for those places.
Right, and as you're doing that, you're gaining more coalition partners. You're meeting more people. You're networking. So when it comes to your contract negotiations or any other fight that you're up against, you now know more people. You bring more people into the fold, and we see how, I mean, we are ripe for a political revolution, and people more than ever are seeking some change and some relief. And so all of these, all of these fights mean raising us all up in one way or another. So Wendy and Kabede, what have been some of your biggest hurdles, and how have you overcome them?
Well, the biggest challenge for us from the beginning was, as you know, in the airport work, majority of people came from Africa and Spanish people. So from the beginning, we are afraid of, just because of lying off from our work. And the other reason is lack of information and attention, because most of our fellow workers are work 2 or 3 jobs in the same airport, just to achieve their goal. The other reason for the challenge at that time is the area size of the airport. Do you know, from Terminal A up to Terminal D, Terminal C, it walks a long distance. I will try my best just to convince each and every employee by getting them just to involve to our struggle. The other main reason at that time was the counterattack of the employer side, and they disseminate some misinformation about union, and some of them awarded by their loyalty to their employees, to the management of their employees. And as per my last and not the least, as per my knowledge concerned, there is a double standard rate in the airport. For someone in the airport who work for MWA, Minister of Metropolitan Washington Airport Administration, they pay 13 and 54 minimum wage. But for others like us, ULAN America and ATS workers, we get $6.75. It is hard for me just to tell you these facts. So to challenge all this, we try our best just through the help of 32BGI. Unless and otherwise their help, we cannot achieve today's what we call it, achievement. I can call it, this one is an achievement by itself, because moi, after 1 year, Metropolitan Washington Airport Administration accept our question after 1 year. We start our struggle in May 2050. After 1 year, they gave us some attention. At least they gave us some attention.
Thank you. Wendy, do you want to add anything on the biggest struggles and hurdles and how you've overcome them in some of your other fights for 15?
I think that on the day-to-day, the things that Kebede talked about are big struggles, and I think that in the bigger picture, what that is that people don't have an expectation that they should do better.
Right.
You know, people have very low, workers in this country have very low expectations for what should be. And I think it's our job as union members, as activists, as leaders in our communities, to push that envelope constantly and to fight for what is ours and to fight back to take back what is ours. And like I said at the beginning, where people thought that we were crazy talking about $15 an hour, I think this struggle shows that when workers come together, when we build a movement, that we can actually change the discourse and change the narrative of how people talk about economic inequality in this country, and that people have to understand that it does not need to be that way, that there's a reason that it's that way, and that we have to fight back against that. And until we do that, until we take it back, we will continue to be in this struggle and not win. And so we have to win. We have to change it. So I think that's really how we have to overcome this struggle. And I would say my last piece on that is that one of the things that is very important about this fight is that we elect people that support workers' issues, but that then we don't stop.
Right.
Right? That we elect them and then we continue to fight. And if they veer off the path, because they might veer off the path, we have to push them back on the path because we're going to continue to fight, and we're going to be in their faces whether they're our friends or are not, and we're going to follow it up, and we're going to do whatever it takes to take this country back and to win for working families, because the economic inequality that we are all suffering from has to stop. It has to end. So.
Very well said. Mona, the same question for you. What have been some of your biggest struggles and hurdles, and how has the coalition overcome them?
So taking on some of these policies for Minneapolis, that being the biggest city in the state, having a lot of coalition partners all come to the table. You left your ego at the door, you walked on in, and you figured out a way to pitch in. There was so many moving parts of the campaign. There was the lead campaign, and then there were 7 subcommittees underneath it. I will say that Take Action Minnesota was one of the leaders in coordination in making sure that all of these tables still communicated, still saw what each piece was doing, and kept it all together. We also were good at managing each other's diverse perspectives. We didn't have all or nothing or opt in or opt out. There were things that you could step back from or step up from, but you never quit the coalition. And we learned that we had to listen to each other and that we could learn a lot from each other by hearing what each other had to say. This was not leader-led. The workers were put out into the forefront. And we had to do a lot of talking with workers too, because a lot of people don't want to tell their story. There's shame in debt, and there's shame in maybe not possibly making the amount of money that you thought you should be making. And so to draw people out and bring them out to share their stories helped all of our workers, helped them feel empowered, helped them keep on telling their stories and having others feel empowered around them, so that we were always sharing the power and leaving no power on the table left behind.
That's awesome. I have to say that, your leadership in Minnesota and with what you do is amazing. I recently met with some lead CenturyLink HR people and about some national items. And your name came up. And they're, they know they can't do anything in CenturyLink through the state without Mona supporting it. So I'm telling you, your work is great. They know that you have a whole team behind you. And I can't say enough about how proud I am of you and the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so can each of you describe, and Moni, you kind of did already, but the importance of having a diverse coalition?
It's essential. We look a lot to history, so the National Partnership, was there for passing the FMLA and remembers and leans back on that. And there are a couple lessons we got from passing the FMLA. One is state progress, right? 20 states had expanded or passed state FMLAs before the national passed. And the other is a diverse coalition that represents the voices of those who are impacted by the policy. And so in every state and at the national level, we have been building that. And that includes, the National Coalition has over 400 organizations at the state and local level and national level. And it includes proud union members, it includes the faith community, communities of color, community organizing groups, business groups. It's important to bring in because they are our primary opposition on this issue. So we may not get the chamber, but we have plenty of individual businesses who say, yeah, no, I can do this. I've been doing it, or I can't do it alone. I need national help, a national policy. Women's groups, children's groups, the seniors groups, making sure to including the aging community, the communities, a caregiving community who is deeply impacted by these policies. So I guess I'm naming them because it's important. It has been essential to telling the whole story because you never know what you're elected, what brings them to the table, right? Yeah. What is the thing that they're most interested in? And for policies like minimum wage and paid sick days and paid leave, there's enough, it impacts enough people that you can find the voice that resonates with them. And also to stress, I guess the last thing, one of the things is the evidence is with you on all of these policies. That is good for children, it's good for caregiving, it lowers healthcare costs, it's good for business. I mean, it's one thing after another. So this idea, and the opposition just knee-jerk reaction is it might be bad. And it's like, no, we have evidence because it's happened in other places and the evidence shows and the evidence is behind you. So you can go in armed with that, and that is also really helpful.
That's great. So it's almost the same as putting a face, or the workers' face, same as the coalitions. Depending on who you're talking to and who you're trying to convince, like you said, one thing may resonate with a city council person because their mother may need help from Alzheimer's or whatever. You never know what actually is going to bring that person in and make them open their heart to actually being a human being and helping other workers. So that's great. Wendy, same question for you. Can you describe the importance of diverse coalitions in your work?
The way I would answer that question is to say that we can't win without it. To think that if anybody in our labor movement thinks that economic inequality, environmental justice, immigration reform, structural racism, and anti-Black racism, if anybody thinks that all of these things are not connected as an attack on working people every day, then we cannot win. These things are connected. They keep us divided, they keep us separated, and unless we can bring people together and build a movement of working people to fight back, I said this before, but I'll say it again, a movement of people to fight back, we cannot win. And we just had the SEIU convention in Detroit, and I was very I was proud of our union and our members for really grappling with these issues, for taking on stuff that was beyond their contracts or their, or what was right in front of them, to say, how are we going to think about this differently? How are we going to blow up the framework in which we think about our work now, and that we cannot win. We cannot win as long as people, workers are considered illegal. We cannot win as long as there is a school to prison pipeline for young men of color. We cannot win as long as people live in neighborhoods that are polluted and they can't breathe and they have asthma and then they don't have access to affordable health care. We cannot win unless we address all those issues and then ultimately address economic inequality.
Thank you. Now, Mona, you kind of touched on some coalition issues, but can you describe some of your coalition partners and the diversity between them?
Sure.
And how it's helping you all?
Sure.
Yes, and I'll come back. Thank you.
Okay. So
That's okay.
the importance of the coalition for us was, of course, that we were all stronger for having worked together, having been on other fights with each other. We understand each other better. So the outcome reflects the value of the coalition work that was built, and we also bring different strengths to the table. The disparities that needed to be addressed, we wanted it to be successful so that we could build independent power. That was the crucial part of it, the creating of the base for us to build on the work to ensure that nobody was left behind. So having that coalition is just, you can't win without it.
Right, exactly. Thank you so much. Kebede, first of all, I would like to say that I'm honored that you're here today. When I was in Denver, I did a lot of work helping build a taxi co-op there, and the newest one just got off the ground after I left, and it's a majority of African immigrants. So, we realize our struggles that we have every day, and then try to add in being immigrant with cultural and language barriers. So you not only, have to fight issues about low wages and standard of living, but you don't know all of the laws and all of the things, and you are extra vulnerable to discrimination. And I just applaud you for getting involved, and CWA is behind you 100%. And I know for a fact how brave you have to be, and you have to put your fear aside to try and stand up for what's right. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And can you say anything about coalition partners and who all you've worked with on this?
Yeah, I have a short and precise message for this one. Unless and otherwise we are struggle, we cannot achieve our goal. From the beginning, in order to tackle any challenge in this world, we must struggle. We must face that challenge. Unless and otherwise we challenge them, we cannot achieve. Because I know from my little knowledge about this country companies, how they are greedy, and I cannot say anything more than this. At least they must understand, or they must add value for human element for their workers. Unless and otherwise they gave us some attention for our question, for our any kind of economic question, I don't know how they understand and how they alleviate our problem, unless and otherwise we are struggling them. So it is, for me, it is the best and the one and the only way to achieve our goal is we must continue our struggle. And I want to forward something on behalf of my airport workers to the Congress. I would like to forward my heartfelt appreciation for Congress for the show up when we are struggling at the time of striking. So thank you for the Congress, and I forward this message from my heartfelt. Thank you.
We're about out of time, and we're going to wrap up this panel. I would like to thank you all for being here. You know, it's a little different sitting up here in front of everybody. Even though there's chairs, it's not very relaxing, so just so you know. But thank you all, and thank you for what you do, and thank you for listening and participating. Thank you. Thank you.